Hi, this is Antoine Walsh. This is my YouTube video for Materials Development 5730, the TESL 5730 class. So the theme of my video today is going to be using Chinese characters to better understand the Chinese and Japanese languages. I'm going to be focusing on Japanese, and my project partner, Nina Garcia, is going to talk more about the Chinese language. For those who don't know, this is the Japanese language here, an example of it. It uses 3 alphabets. This is a hiragana character. This is katakana here, and you see these sort of more complex looking characters are called kanji, or Chinese characters, and they were taken from the Chinese alphabet, and it evolved into the Japanese alphabet. While Chinese and Japanese are entirely different languages, the thing they have in common is that they use a lot of these same characters, which carry the same meanings. Again, while they're completely different languages, it's interesting to see when you have, say, Japanese tourists in Taiwan. Sometimes you might see the shop owners pointing to a sign that says that has the character for beef or something like that. Or when you have Chinese tourists in Japan, for example, they might be able to recognize certain things, not by looking at signs, and maybe not be able to read it, but have like a gist of what it says. I want to, in this video, really stress the importance of learning the meanings of these kanjis, of these Chinese characters, and because a lot of foreigners try and take shortcuts and skip it, which I really would advise against. In my experience, I found learning the meanings of Chinese characters really helped me with comprehension of Japanese vocabulary. So while I'm talking, I'm going to go ahead and show you this video I made. I live in Japan. This is my 5th year here, and this is just a Saturday morning routine I filmed. Take a look while I talk about the Chinese characters. So I moved to Japan about four years, maybe 4 years and 3 months ago. And at that time, I hardly spoke any Japanese, certainly couldn't read any of it, and I found myself really overwhelmed with not being able to speak the language here, and I dove in headfirst into self-study, using textbooks and Rosetta Stone at that time, and also just flashcards, applications on my phone. I would study vocabulary without using the Chinese characters initially, just phonetic sounds. Like, say, the verb for eat is taberu, so you can study that without knowing the character that word uses. So you could, in a sense, it would be like just studying the Roman, studying like that spelled out, like Taberu, instead of learning the character for that word. But eventually, there's this common pitfall that Japanese beginners come to when they're living here, where you kind of wonder, is there a way, like, I can learn, because I just want to speak this language. Is there a way I can kind of skip the, this mountain of characters that I need to memorize? Is there a way I can learn it and save time and not do that? And then maybe not be able to like read a book, but I'll just be able to get by in conversation. And a lot of foreigners try to do that, and I'm here to tell you that that's really not smart, because you knowing the meanings of Chinese characters is like a giant cheat code to the language, and knowing, say, the sound of one word, like one word for swimming is sui e, and then the word for seltzer water is tan san sui. So notice that both of those words have the sound sui in it, and that's because they share that same character. So Japanese, in a sense, is kind of like a giant puzzle piece, a giant puzzle, and each character is like a little piece, and you learn one word, and the characters and the sounds those characters make, they all kind of connect together. And so I just wanted to elaborate more on that a little bit using this Japanese dictionary website. And let's just think of a random word, say marriage. The word marriage, it's the kind of word you would learn early on in Japanese. Very basic word. Let me look at here. And the two characters used for that are like this, which means tie, bind, more or less, and this, which literally means marriage. So the words are kekkon. And if you take a look at the word, the kon in kekkon, you're going to see some other words like konyaku. So the kon, when you hear that kon and in conversation you're talking about marriage, you can almost immediately like visualize it. And then the word yaku is means like it's like a contract or a promise. I think it means promise. And you connect those two words, those two characters, and then you have the word for engagement. So that's how you would say you're engaged as opposed to saying married. So that's just an example, but that's the way the language works. And you have these visual images and the sounds they make, knowing the pictographic image makes it so much easier to remember and to tie in to new words that you learn, to the point where you might hear a word you've never heard before, but because you can sort of visualize that character, you can without even taking out a dictionary, you can kind of just understand the meaning. It's something that I think is pretty unique about Japanese and possibly Chinese, in that makes it different from Romance languages. Whereas, if you're hearing something in English and you don't know, you've never heard that word, you don't know what that word means, it's more likely to just kind of be like blah 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 and make the English more incomprehensible overall. So yeah, long story short, you have to learn these characters. There's really no way around it, but it is a daunting task. There's just so many of them. So how do you do it? Well, you have to find a strategy that works for you. And for me personally, that's basics, remembering the kanji, which I'm now going to explain. But I've I've met friends who've complained about it. They said it wasn't for them. So maybe it's another system that works better for you. Maybe just traditional flashcards. Maybe writing the characters over and over again. If after showing you my system, I hope you'll understand why it's more logical to use mnemonics over doing that. But whatever works for you. At the end of the day. So yeah. All right, so I'm going to explain how this mnemonic system I'm talking about works. So this is first. This was originally just a book, and the idea was that you would like write your own stories. But eventually, what happened is the people created this forum, and you could submit stories, and then other Chinese character learners would like vote for which ones they liked, and maybe vote, and people could write their own story and upload it, and the popular ones would be voted to the top. So it's really a useful resource, because that way you don't have to think of like your own story for every character, which would take much longer. So if you take a look at say this one here. So kanji or Chinese characters are made up of other characters within themselves, and also what are called radicals. So what this system does is like you take the radicals and give them certain nicknames. For example, here this is water. This is the number 9. That's an actual character. That's the actual character for 9. And this is tree. That's the actual character for tree. So let's take a look at the most popular story, which is here. It's to make this dye, and remember, dye is the meaning of the word. I used water and the barks of 9 different trees. So if you were studying, what you would do is you would make a flashcard. On one side, you would draw this character that you're studying. On the other side, you write the word die, and then flip it upside down, and then write this story. So imagine you did this 100 times with 100 different characters, and then you're drilling them, and then you come up to this character, and so now you're like, you don't remember that it's die, but you can see, you're gonna recognize the water, the 9, and the tree, and you're gonna think, okay, wow, water, 9, tree, water, 9. Oh yeah, that's right. To make the die, I used water and the barks of 9 different trees. It's like a hint. And it's kind of amazing. I remember doing this so much with these big decks of so many flashcards, and just that little mnemonic hint of that story that you would go through the deck a few times and kind of struggle, and then maybe the 6th or 7th time it was just like flip, 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 and all of a sudden you would know the meanings of all these like hundreds and hundreds of different pictographs, and you could do it really fast. It was like kind of amazing. And you might be wondering, okay, so how does that help you learn a language? Well, on this website they actually include words where the vocabulary is used as well, the vocabulary where the character is used. And you can see right here, osen, which is pollution. Here, down one, we have kansen, which is like infection, contagion. And interestingly, earlier in this video I'm working on, if I go back to the beginning here, you can see that word right here, actually. Okay, so we're talking about the coronavirus, and then the word, there it is right there. There's the character, yeah. Coronavirus, infection, prevention, and then for the sake of. So yeah, that's how things go. You know, one minute you're just learning the meaning of a word, and then all of a sudden it's you're gonna come across it in real life. So I take a just quick look at a couple other ones. Here's a common one. This here means dirt or soil, and the nickname for this becomes scorpion. Let's take a look at the most popular story here. Picture the ground. That's the meaning of that character. Picture the ground as an extent of soil where scorpions are buried like landmines. Imagine a sign post saying "No trespassing, scorpion mines," if that helps, and how it is dangerous to walk there. So yeah, I mean, you write something a little bit crazy, you know, something that kind of like the crazier it is, maybe. To be honest, I would use some stories that are like a little bit like adult or something um, kind of shocking, or using some crazy real life figure, some outlandish celebrity or something, to make these stories a little bit more wacky, which just makes them all the easier to remember. And it's kind of fun, to be honest. Um, yeah, so that is um, James Hasik's Remembering the Kanji Mnemonic System, and it really worked for me. Every person studying Japanese, I always recommend this to them, and uh, I mean, I'll take a fun system like this over just writing them over and over and over. I'll take that 9 days out of 7, but yeah. Alright, so I just want to wrap up here, and I guess just conclude by stressing that when you have a solid understanding of all these meanings, like the picture and what it means, it really helps you understand vocabulary on another level. And just I feel like the best way to explain is just with an example. But you can see this here. This is the character meaning full. So when you're driving, you're going to see this character in a parking lot, and if it's red, then it means the parking lot is full. If it's green, then it means it's open. Um, the word fu mon, the mon is the full character, but the fu negates the word, so that's the word fu mon means like discontent or disgruntled, or the word manzoku means satisfaction or contentment. The word man-in, the in sound is a character for people or employees. That word means full and crowded, like on a train or something. The word fumon, mimon is insufficient. So you might see that if like you're a kid is trying to get on a roller coaster, and there's a sign that says like an age restriction or something. And there's just so many of these. Mon 10, that's a perfect score for grades. Mon Getsu, that's a full moon. So you imagine, you know, you learn one word, and then you learn another word, and you hear these things, and you're like, oh, Mon, you know Getsu is the moon, you know Mon full. You know what those pictures what they look like, not just what they sound like. And it just starts to, the process of learning Japanese really starts to skyrocket over time. So, yeah, with that, I'll just end by saying you have, there's a lot of them, but you have to memorize all these characters, and I recommend doing it with the
mnemonic system, the Haysig's mnemonic system. So I'm going to end this video and pass it on to my partner, Nina Garcia, who's going to be talking more about Chinese characters and their influence on the Chinese language, which I'm looking forward to learning more about. Thank you for watching and listening.
Hello class, my name is Nina Garcia and I'm working with Antoine Walsh on our YouTube video discussing how to learn Chinese and Japanese vocabulary. I will be focusing on Chinese vocabulary and how you can learn it. So I will touch a little bit on my own Chinese learning experience, how I started learning Chinese. And then I will tell you guys some ways that I've studied Chinese, some useful tips that I've used to really remember these Chinese characters. So I first started studying Chinese when I was a junior in high school, and I think what really drew me to the language was the Chinese character and what it represented, and it was so foreign to me, so exotic. I was just very intrigued by it, and just the way they look. They look like they're telling a story, which they are, but to a foreigner who's never studied an Asian language before, they were very intriguing to me. So ever since junior year of high school, I have studied Chinese. I studied it all throughout university, and now I'm self-teaching myself. And I also use Chinese with my students that I'm working with when I'm teaching English online. So it's a really great way to be able to practice the use of my Chinese. And yeah, so I wanted to talk about a little of the history of the Chinese language. And Chinese is the oldest written language in the world, and it contains 6,000 characters at least. And what's really amazing about Chinese is that every stroke, every radical has some type of meaning. And when they're all put together, they represent a word, which is really fascinating to me. And in this example here, we see these strokes right here, and that represents water, those strokes. So it's very fascinating, and it just shows how it's evolved over time into this one being water. But the average person needs to know at least 40,000 characters, and in order to read the Chinese newspaper, you have to know at least 2,000 to 3,000. So that's a lot of characters, and it's very interesting how the Chinese language has evolved over time through social changes, through political changes, yet the written Chinese, the Chinese language and the characters, that has not changed. That has stayed the same throughout all these changes. It's very fascinating too to mention that there are many Chinese dialects spoken all over China. So two people coming from different regions wouldn't necessarily be able to understand each other verbally, but if they had to write something down to each other, the written communication, they could understand each other, which just shows how powerful the Chinese written language is. It can bring people together who necessarily couldn't verbally understand each other, which I think is very, very interesting. And then Chinese has 3 writing systems. The simplified Chinese is what I learned in high school. That's what they teach you. However, traditional Chinese is what's actually spoken in China, and what everyone uses there. If you read a newspaper, you're going to see all the complex Chinese characters in their full form. And then pinyin is also what we Westerners use to be able to read the Chinese characters. It's called pinyin. So it's also very interesting, like Antoine mentioned, how there is a very strong correlation between Chinese and Japanese. However, they're both very, very different languages. The pronunciation is very different, but the characters are very interconnected. And he mentioned the kanji in Japanese. So Japan borrowed lots of Chinese characters from China, and they used it and incorporated it into their language, and that eventually evolved into Japanese. And today the Japanese use kanji. And he mentioned how if, say, a Chinese tourist went to Japan, they would be able to read these characters and know kind of the gist of the meaning. And from my personal experience, when I went to Japan twice, I did see Japanese kanji written everywhere, and I was like, because of my previous knowledge of my Chinese language study, I was able to know the meaning. So when I was at the train station, I remember seeing the word train in Chinese and train in Japanese, but I knew that it meant train because I had studied Chinese. So it really helped me a lot when I was there. Also, when I took Japanese class, I had studied thoroughly Chinese, and when we were studying the Japanese kanji in the class, I had a leg up from everyone else because everyone thought the kanji was so hard, but I thought it was easy because I had studied Chinese, and that had given me the confidence and boost that, oh yeah, like, I know this meaning, I know that means water, and I know how to write it in Japanese kanji, so I feel there is a very strong correlation between both languages. However, they're both very, very different. And also, if you see something else interesting, if a Japanese speaker came into contact with a Chinese speaker, they would not be able to understand each other, but if they did write some of the characters, they would understand the meaning. So it's really, really cool, that aspect of it. So how do I learn Chinese? How can I help you learn Chinese? What methods do I use? Well, usually when I'm studying a character, I study it by the certain stroke order, and lots of the characters to me look like actual pictures, and it's so cool. I really see like the symbols in the characters showing the actual meaning of the word. And I'll show you some examples that I prepared today. Like this one, for example. So you see this character is the character for fire, and they just did a little drawing of fire, but that's the character for fire. This is the character for tree, and if you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, it could look like a tree. This is for sun, so you could actually picture a window like they have depicted here, and you're looking out at the sky and the sun. This is person, and it actually looks like a person, this character. This is mouth, and it has the shape of a box mouth. These look like actual two doors with little panels. And this is mountain, which you could actually see, visualize it. It does look like a mountain. And this is the character for water. So it's really, really cool how, if you look at it in a certain way, these characters actually look like the word they're representing. Also, something else I wanted to share about this character for water. So if you add 2 more little strokes, that becomes ice. So if you know this word means water, this character, and you add 2 more strokes, well then you get ice. So I think Antoine touched on that idea a little bit, but when you learn Chinese, you can build off of it, and you can make new words from previously learned words, or their words are actually have characters like built into them. For example, like if you added 2 strokes here, it means ice. Or lots of different examples that you can use certain characters that you've already learned to learn new ones, or they're already in the new words you're learning, which gives you kind of a hint. And so that's another example is here we have fu means husband, and it shows how it has evolved over time, Chinese, and it kind of looks like a man if you look at it from this pictographic way. And this is the current character for fu, so it's very interesting. And that's how I've studied Chinese, by looking for how can I find a visual representation of the meaning so I can remember it in English. So I can know the English meaning, but I know the Chinese representation of it. This is the character for love. Now this is the complex version of the Chinese character of love. And we have here in the middle, you see it is the word for heart in Chinese, and it's also the word for heart in Japanese, which is really cool. But they use this in China. This is their complex character of love. But as you can see, for me, when I was studying this character for the first time, if you look at it, it looks kind of like a man here with their arms kind of embracing, and this could be like their chest area with the heart, and maybe their legs crossed. So a technique I use to study Chinese is kind of making a story from the character. And it's really fun to think of Chinese as like you're seeing the characters and they're telling us something. They're telling us a story. So that's how I think of this character for love. This one too is also really interesting. As you can see, it's a baby. This is how the character evolved over time. Boom, boom, boom. And then it goes to this character for child. Also for this one, it's a woman. This is the character. It's evolved over time, over centuries. And this is the character for woman. Now, these were some characters I wanted to teach you guys today that I really think represent, or the character itself represents the meaning. So this word, da, is big, and it looks like to me like something big. And as I said in my example here, da looks like a big person, right? Big man. So that's how I remembered it. I kept thinking, oh, it's big, big man. So da is big. Then we have a person, right? So this actually looks like a person walking. So that's the character Ren. So really, really cool. That's how you can visualize it in your head. This one is rain, you, and automatically you can think that these 4 strokes as raindrops, or how I viewed it too is it could represent a window, and you're watching the window or watching outside the window and you see rain falling. So this is the character for rain. And then these 3 characters for 1, 2, 3, I think it makes the most sense to Westerners learning this language who've never studied Asian language before. So the stroke, or the character for 1 is 1 stroke, E, and then 2 is R, 2 strokes, and then 3 is 3 strokes, which is sun. So it's super, super cool. I think that you can look at Chinese and, well, in this example, look at these 1, 2, 3 and actually see the 1 stroke, 2 stroke, 3 stroke. So it's very, very interesting how you can look at these images and actually pull out some meaning that makes sense to you. So that's how I've studied Chinese. That's how I've used my knowledge about Chinese, and I hope that's helpful for you. So thank you for listening to our presentation, and see you all soon. Bye!